Oh, you're recording. Okay, great. Hi everybody. I'm Jen. From the Wild Center. It's been a little while since I've been on a clean call. Sorry, it's just feels super busy. I'm sure everyone else feels that same way. So I am going to be facilitating our informal conversation today, and I think we just had NAAE on that docket, but we can open that up, if there's not much to talk about on that front. But I just wanted to first see if anybody had any announcements. And you can just jump right in.
Okay, I'll go ahead, Jenna. Let's see. Coming out of one of the 5 main science festivals in the Bay Area now, this one is the one behind me is at Cal State University East Bay. Very diverse, very well turned out, wonderful things, and clean, getting well represented and things. And as you can see, we have easily the most prominent booth. We're the lead booth. I can show another picture of just how big it is. That's just one angle. The person who organizes it, I think, is just, I'm going to make this an announcement, but I think it's an important development. The person who's paid to organize it for the County of Alameda is a retired teacher who deliberately retired early as a K-12 teacher because she wanted to make a bigger difference. She wanted to be able to lead and teach, and she is now then working on having a science festival in the Bay Area specifically on sustainability and climate action. So that's an example of a K-12 teacher doing creative things to make a difference by stepping out of strictly the role of K-12 teacher. And it's a very big step for climate action. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of do that. Our events are back, and they are, teachers are coming up. I'll show you a picture. Teachers coming up and taking the clean flyers and things like that. It's a great connection. So thank you.
Speaking of sort of teacher events, I'm really excited. I said I've been spamming this event for the last couple calls, but it's finally here. So on Saturday in Miami, we're going to have a climate education summit. They're not all going to show up on the day of, but we currently have 106 registrants from mostly Miami-Dade and Broward County, but a few folks coming from further afield, which is really exciting. And obviously, clean resources are going to be some of the things that we offer to teachers.
That's awesome, Carolyn. Thanks for representing clean, and that's great. Congrats on good turnout. I'm excited for y'all.
I was doing the online Zoom trainings, and then we were discussing strategizing for the next one. And that half-hour meeting was an hour, 15 minutes. And by the time I left, I was running a conference. So
funny how that happens.
Right. I'm really nervous and really excited, and just, I really hope everything goes well.
I think it will. That's exciting. But yeah, also a lot.
Yeah, I'm excited to just even, I appreciate you sharing about it. And one thing I appreciate this is about, I haven't had a chance to look into it yet, Carolyn, it's just the idea of looking at your model as a, how are you running an institute? You know what I mean? What is it that you're pulling together? What sessions are coming together? I appreciate being able to, hopefully take a little bit of a look into that to make sure, it helps me think about well, what if I do this in the Adirondacks or in New York State someplace? What would it look like? So I love seeing other models of that in other places. And, the Clio Institute has such a great reputation, and your ability to connect with people is so important. And I really appreciate that. So thank you for sharing. It'll be great to hear how it goes.
Absolutely.
We're doing a climate institute in Louisiana in January. So I'm also really looking forward to hearing how it goes for you, Carolyn.
If you're interested, it's not editable, or at least it shouldn't be. There in the chat, I put in that's our agenda for the day.
Oh, thank you so much. I also, maybe a future clean call on sort of maybe members sharing out on their institute syllabus, like how they developed it, or I think that's, to me, that would be really interesting. Just an idea, but like between, sounds like we have two great examples right here. Hi, Frank.
Hi, Jen. One idea that seems to be emerging from the ACEL summit is that there was a convergence of a lot of people who were represented there of this type of activity. And so one of the natural ideas there is to build a community of practice around that. So there's some efficiencies and value for people who are participating in this exact kind of activity. You're always going to make a resources list for people who are participants. That's a lot of work, and probably 8 people have already done it. And so why not have a community practice around it so that we can actually elevate some more efficient ways of using people's time? So that I think, Katie and Gina, like some of the next steps that seem to be implied, but we haven't actually designed how that process is. But Carolyn, I think that's what I'm seeing. That is like the fruit is laying in your hand if you just put them underneath the apple. Just like put it right there and then plop, there it is. Sorry, you low-hanging fruit, you trying to get the analogy.
And if you don't mind, maybe I was going to shout out to Carolyn, if I would, of also having youth action programs. So you particularly have Diego and Katrina working in schools in both counties, really incredible work. And along the ACEL's point of view of connecting up, of we're working to have the different states have the youth groups be pen pals, present with each other, support each other. Your team in that regard is outstanding, Carolyn.
I will say that I'm very lucky. I have really fantastic coworkers. Like maybe it's just the nature of a mission-driven nonprofit that kind of everyone's on the same page. But honestly, almost everyone that I have worked with, either within Clio or in organizations like this, have just all been fantastic.
It's great. Thanks, Carolyn. Is there other announcements? I'll share a couple. Well, mostly it's just one. We are back into like full-on youth summit mode right now. Our first sort of major summit is November 9th and 10th at the Wild Center, but then we also have a number of other summits that are happening in New York State. In particular, one in the Finger Lakes with our partner at the Finger Lakes Institute that happens the week before. There's one happening, a new summit happening in the Mohawk Valley as part of the Onondaga Environmental Institute. And then farther afield, we just launched a new initiative with Science North, which is a science museum in Ontario, north of Toronto, and they're going to be doing 13 youth climate summits over the next 2 years with a focus on rural Indigenous communities, and they're working really deeply with Indigenous partners. And some of our Wild Center staff just attended their launch summit 2 weeks ago. And then we also have summits are happening everywhere. It feels like all of a sudden, San Francisco, the Bay Area Youth Climate Summit just happened on the 24th of September. Columbus Zoo has their summit coming up. So there's a bunch of activity in youth summit world. And I'd happy to send you more information about the Canadian work, Frank, and or connect you with our partners at Science North. This was a direct impact of, well, two things. One, we also launched it 3 years ago, the Frontenac Arch Biosphere Reserve Summit, which is a Canadian Biosphere Summit. For those of you that biospheres, there's 27 in the US and 700 and something of them globally. And we've been kind of working on the idea of getting summits into that network of biosphere reserves globally. We've had a lot of interest from some regions in Italy that are excited about biospheres in Italy that are excited about this. And anyway, so the Science North staff attended the Frontenac Arch Biosphere Summit 2 years ago, which was online, but it was all it was led by I think she was a Mohawk woman. So it had a very strong indigenous grounding. And then that kind of kicked it off. And then we had 2 other staff attend our summer institute this summer. And that sort of like solidified that new strategic direction for that, for their science center. So it was really exciting because it's one of the first science centers in a while to really kind of like this is going to happen now, and like really like 13 summits. It's like a major investment on their part. So it's a huge initiative. So we're really excited about that.
Jen, would it be something, and for Gina and Katie and Frank, as something, maybe even a subject for a part of a clean call of, at these summits, different points of view are emerging, different approaches. And for those of us who are in our sector and maybe a little older, to at least be aware of a lot what gets discussed. I was definitely part of the Bay Area Youth Climate Summit, and some pretty interesting developments of the kind of things that are being discussed that impact our work, and we want to at least be aware of it, talk about it sometime. I don't know, just a thought.
So Jim, are you suggesting like doing a clean call with some of those other summit or site organizers? Is that what you're suggesting?
I mean, part of it is I don't know if they'd want to come.
If they would want to come to a summit, to a call here, you mean?
Well, one of the things that I want to speak of is a very heavy influence, which is kind of a distortion of like Greta Thunberg's approach, I think, which is a very heavy thing of our generation, meaning the people, the high schoolers there now, are facing more challenges in work than any generation ever has in history. We are going to do more. We have done more. And it really has a heavy influence. Of the past generations have just blown it. There's not much we can learn from them and do things. That's certainly not what everybody's saying, but it's a strong thing. And it sort of has there's not much we can learn from older people, and we don't need to work with them. And yet we'll work with some organizations that promote that idea that if you work with us, you don't need to work with anyone else. And it's just one of the trends. There's a lot, but I'm sure there's other things at other summits. If people come and can represent that, that's great. But regardless, I think we want to make sure we're listening to what's being said. So it's a thought.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. I haven't heard that perspective coming out of other summits in the past, just from mostly what we're hearing is that, it's like, yes, adults, our generation or generations older than me, I'll just say that are not really stepping up in the way that they should, but they're not entirely being discounted, which it feels like what you're describing. But like, we need to find better ways to work and listen to young people and like be more, I guess, proactive in our reacting around, in the work and the solutions that we're doing. So, I mean, I think that we have our monthly, actually we have it today, our monthly summit network. We get all of our, which anyone of course is welcome to join. And that call is every month on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. And we're focusing on different aspects. I think there's a couple different presentations today about youth summits that have happened recently, just to like hear a report out, and we try to learn from each other, speaking of those community practices. And it's really helpful to get those perspectives. But I haven't, it's interesting to hear what you're saying, Jim. I haven't heard that from other summit sites.
Yeah, and I wanted to give an example. I'm certainly not saying this is dominant, this is everything, even in the summit I was at. But I wanted to bring it up in a situation. It's also saying that we need to be proactive in going and listening and bringing it back. It won't necessarily get to us if we aren't proactive going in and saying, so what were the points of view being said? What are the trends? What are the things at the various summits that go on? So thank you.
Any other announcements? Sorry, we kind of went off the announcement thing for a second, tangent. So I think first on our list on the agenda was just the NAAE conference, and I know that Frank, Gina, and I will be there. I'm not sure, Kari or Carolyn, are either of you going to NAAE next week? No. Okay, well, I know that there is also opportunities to attend virtually if folks have interest in looking at the agenda. We could probably drop that into the chat here in a second, but that, you know, there's a lot going on. There's a number of different climate presentations. Specifically, I know Gina is doing a poster session on clean, and we're going to organize a clean meetup and do all those things, conferencey things. So we'll be excited, and we'll send a note out, I think, to the Clean Network maybe today, Gina, about a meetup somewhere.
Yeah, today or tomorrow. Probably be Thursday night.
Perfect.
And I mentioned to Gina, and Jen, you've probably seen this too, even though I'm not going. There's a climate change education group within the NAAE like forums or whatever. They were hosting a meetup on Friday, and I sent it to Gina, but she's leaving, and I would bet that there's some other folks who also can't join that one since it's on Friday. So I definitely think, and in general, it's good to have a clean meetup. So I think that's a great idea, and to do that on Thursday.
Oh, I don't know about the Friday meetup.
Yeah, neither do I.
Yeah, I can send that to you all.
Could you?
Let's see.
That'd be great.
Please.
I can put it in the chat. Let me just.
It's right here. It's
Gina has it. There you go. Yeah, I saw this.
Local time. On 1 to 2 p.m. local time on, that's Fridays the 14th.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Emily Schaller, who I've not met before, but she's organizing it. And then there are these replies. So I'm probably going to reply that I'm not gonna be able to be there, but I've advertised the meetup, and that we're also gonna have another meetup on probably Thursday evening.
And you might want to just let them know about clean if none. I don't know if any of them are.
Yeah, if anyone else from this list wants to come.
Oh, Melissa Remmel. There you go.
Yeah, I don't recognize.
I've seen Carolee's name before, but I don't know that it was part of clean. Would you put that in the chat though, Gina?
This is on the 14th.
Mm-hmm.
This is on the 14th, 1 to 2 local time.
Unfortunately, I won't be able to be there because I'm heading up to ASU to meet with the Global Futures Laboratory. They're doing a lot of work in this space, so they have a deep bench that I don't understand. So the reason I'm going to Phoenix is to understand that bench, to bring it over here. They're just doing deep. I mean, every time I look around, I'm like, oh, that's another thing ASU is doing, and another one, and another one, and another one. But you know, everyone is so active that we don't have time to actually connect dots. So that's why I won't be there at that, but I'll be back for the later event on that Friday.
That's how much do we talk about that all the time, Frank? There's so much happening, and
well, that's what I do. Welcome to my world. I go find it, and then I go, how about you talk? And we, you know, how does that work? And then I go find it, and then I go find it. So that's just.
But that's what I was saying. It's Friday afternoon too, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's some other folks who couldn't join. So it'd be good to do something Thursday and communicate that to that. But that's neat.
One thing I'll say about this NAAE conference, I did put the in-person agenda in there. If you just use the word climate and just scan through it, there's a whole boatload of work that historically would not show up at NAAE. So in the past, AGU used to be robust like this. Well, NAAE is robust this year. So I think there's some interesting work just from looking at the agenda, who's doing what and where. I would highly encourage you to look at that list. And Gina, I don't know if you want to mine and create what's climate related work at NAAE as a list. I mean, I know there are clean network people doing things. I've got an event, but there's other people. And so in the past, we've talked about how do we grow the network? Well, we go ask them to join the network. Like, I see you're working in this space. Have you considered joining this work in a network context? That's what clean is.
Definitely. Yeah,
That's a
thanks
good
for putting
point,
that in
Frank.
there.
Thank you.
I can look through this. Maybe I'll send an email out to the listserv asking, saying I'm gonna make a list and ask if you're doing a session, let me know so I can include it in the list. And I'll mine this list as well.
Thanks, Gina. That'd be great.
I don't know if there are any other thoughts about NAAA. We don't have to talk about it the entire time since most people here aren't going.
Any other thoughts on that? Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess Gina, Frank, and I will catch up on this later then. We'll miss you guys. And I also have to pop
Have
off. I see
fun. I'm
Katie's
glad
note.
you're all going. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
there'll
I
be
have to
some
run.
representation. So Gina, I'm gonna pass off to you because I'm gonna have to also hop off. Sorry.
See
Yeah,
you in Tucson, Jen.
See you in Tucson. You're my ride.
Let me know when you're going to the airport. I can pick you up if I'm there first.
Okay, I'll see you soon.
We're a full
Bye.
service network here, guys. Come on.
I know, it's great. Taxi service and delivery.
What do you need? Yeah, what do you need?
Perfect. Okay, be well.
thanks, Jen.
Travel safe.
Yeah, Jen has to transition to another task for her day, but and we can open the discussion floor up to anything else folks want to chat about. We've still got half an hour. Frank.
I got a quick one for you.
Yes.
I've been working behind the scenes to organize a new interagency working group for climate engagement and capacity building. It includes education, but we didn't want to use the word education because scientists get all narrow when they think about that. And we wanted a very expansive interpretation of that, including training, workforce, community engagement. It's making progress, but they wanted some very near-term deliverables that we're going to do like this year. And well, guess what showed up? Climate Literacy 3.0. I may have mentioned this to some of you, but I think the decision has been made to open up climate literacy. We tried to do this in the Clean Network back in 2017-18, but couldn't finish it because the Trump administration. Now we're talking about opening it up again and doing a 3.0, but everything's on the deck. The name climate literacy, what the definition is. If you notice the details, it says climate science literacy, technically, making that go away so that it is transdisciplinary. And the last one is action oriented. But I say that to you all, it's kind of almost like a hold me accountable to my word, but it's a community process as well. So I'm not sure of the schedule. We haven't even officially started, but it looks like it's about to happen. So there's a lot of things we've learned since 2009, and we want to incorporate that in the next version of the framework. I just got off a call this morning with the Canadian government, and they're also interested in collaborating in this. And they think the UK might also want to collaborate too. I'm like, it's hard enough with just the United States. But, you know, all my gray hair is related to climate literacy. So you may see me bald very soon. But, you know, I maybe I can get a hat from you, Patrick. I can start wearing that look. Either way, is there any reason why we should like not do that? I know you're representatives, but any caution? Now would be a time.
I guess
When you-
I'd like to hear just a little more, Frank. Like, I kind of think I understand what you mean by climate literacy 3.0, but I feel like you know more about what you mean by that than you said, because you were trying to give us a quick overview at this early stage, and I feel like hearing a little more would help.
So I put the climate literacy guide in the link. You can actually see what we wrote there. It's what the clean collection's built off of, plus the energy literacy framework. So what I mean by that is that, but if a lot of people forget that there are more in that document than the essential principles and fundamental concepts. There's framing text at the front. There's images that we choose that are very important into how we think about this. The cover has a picture of a gecko on a leaf and a blue sky lake, like no people. So there's a lot of pieces to this, what I'm opening up. Even the name climate literacy, is that the right word? We're kind of stuck with it from ocean literacy and environmental literacy, which predate us. But everything's on the table, Wendy, as far as I'm concerned. This has been a transformational document for a long time, but we have an opportunity to set forth a new kind of charter for that transformation going forward. So, we could start with climate literacy 3.0, but just drop the essential principles of climate science. Clearly that the ending of that subtitle is probably wrong. So, is it climate : what do you put after climate empowerment, climate, literacy for action? We'll find the language, but I mean, we probably don't need to talk about peer reviewed the way we did in 2009. That whole section could be replaced with something else, like the antidote to anxiety is action kind of stuff. And there's one other thing I'll note is that we talked about in there that at the time of this, there were the humanities communities were talking about creating a climate literacy for humanities. It never happened. The science community did their part, the humanities part didn't, and no one else carried that ball to the finish. So there's only one climate literacy, and so merging them together into one framework as opposed to two parallel frameworks, which was the compromise we did in 2009, because the climate community just weren't ready to go all the way there, because they're stodgy and conservative by nature. So there's a lot of room for creativity and expansion on what we've learned in the community. I would want that to be reflected in this work. Is that
Thanks,
enough?
that
Wendy?
helps. Yeah, that helps. Thanks.
Frank, how does this resonate with, speaking to fellow government agencies, there is we now have substantial legislation in the 3 bills. We now have corporations that have definitely moved ahead. Whole industries are moved ahead since 2009. From the examples, of course, solar and wind, but there's the energy efficiency and the heat pumps, and there's all this work going on. The youth are doing things. People are doing things. Other countries are doing things. If I'm kind of just trying out the yes, we need to do this. If all those things are happening and federal government agencies are on, we are teaching basic climate science, or even just knowing the words like literacy. Well, are the federal agencies then out of the picture as far as engaging the public? Or who is going to do that rather than updating and transforming the climate, who's known as the climate literacy folks, and let's catch up and change to do climate action and things like that? Is that something that's kind of like, well, we can sit on the sidelines or we can update, right? And I know you're on, there's no question with you, Frank, but other folks you're talking to about, look, we got to do this. And I guess maybe back on another question of, is there anything to be careful about or watch it? Yeah, there's industries. Well, I'm thinking there are industries who weren't getting money out of those bills. There's industries who are getting kind of replaced. They're wish we don't do this, but I don't think we have to worry too much about that.
So I'll give you one, Jim, that I think we missed the boat on in 2009. That's really important, which is the misinformation confusion campaign and the role, the additional challenge our educators and our communicators face with the massive barrage of confusion, denial, delay tactics, and the misinformation, the media literacy part of climate literacy. And, you know, if you look at John Cook's work on indoctrination, inoculation against indoctrination, then that we missed that mark. That's a glaring one that it seems to be. We allude to it in the definition, be able to discern credible from non-credible information, but we completely missed it in the essential principles and guiding principles, in my opinion. So, like, you know, if we want our students to come and our young people and anybody to be able to navigate false information, that's a focus that we need to name in the architecture of what's important, not just in the definition. And we botched that. I think we can fix it, but you know, I think we are in a fundamentally different place, Jim. But understanding these issues, that's never going to go away. You know, what just happened with Ian, like, there's a lot of really important lessons that people just are not understanding, and how, like, our agency warned people and they didn't skillfully adjust.
Yeah.
So, you know, we'll work it out together.
I mean, obviously, it would be absolutely insane to decouple climate science education from climate action and humanities and everything. We're not. I mean, that's just. I mean, I think it's just, if people look at the alternatives, like that's not a route that makes any sense. But yeah, or we're going to stop talking. You know, we're de-emphasizing climate science education. No, that's going to go full bore too. But we're not going to miss. There's disinformation too. Maybe for instance on that. So I'll support here. I'll support for what you're saying, Frank.
Okay. Look, sorry guys, I haven't eaten in a long time, so I'm trying to scarf in some food here. This is an important conversation because when we did Climate Science 1, Climate Literacy 1, and we had an opportunity together as a community to make version 2, fundamentally different than version 1. Real big advancements. I looked at Dan Barstow, who at the time was the chair of the Clean Network. I said, Dan, do we need to do version 2? And he said, absolutely, Frank, we need to do version 2. Go, let's do it together. It was a hell of a lot of work for me. But if you're telling me we need to do version 3, let's go. I'm willing to suit up and do it, but you know, I'm also willing to say now's not the right time. And so, you know, these conversations are, you know, strategic, and green lights are helpful. We don't have that reaction, green light, red light, yellow light. But you know, I'm looking, that's why I hear green, but if there's anybody saying anything else, let me know soon.
I also would like to just give a green light. I think it would be important to include solutions as well, because looking through this document, I see that there's consequences, but there's no mitigation, for example. And I think that would be a really important aspect to include along with the climate justice piece that Jim suggested. I also want to echo what you said, Frank. I think including how to identify those misleading statements is something that is not just pertinent to climate change, but is something that students then could apply to other aspects as well. So potentially including something about the nature of science in general, maybe in some of the the material leading into the literacy part, just something about science literacy in general.
So Carrie, just a quick feedback. The guiding principle was
Mhm.
all about, you know, just understanding it isn't enough, right? So actually applying that into actions so that humans can, well, where's that line? Humans can take actions to reduce climate, you know, that's like maybe we can, as opposed to we are, or increasingly. I mean, so there's little nuanced words that can change the meaning a lot, but that's really why that guiding principle is added. Strengthening it is really important. But so I think there's some of it in there, but it's not as strong and as balanced as it probably needs to be.
More compelling evidence why, yes, we need 3.0.
Thanks, Wendy.
I do think it's an interesting question, given limited time, energy, and resources, to ask whether that update is the most urgent, as compared to like updating the toolbox for teaching climate and energy and other tools. Just thinking about where you've seen people engaging most and getting most value. And if this is it, and it could be, I throw that in.
Patrick, I will tell you, as the person who's lead of this document, I was always like, really, a document? Like, that's the most strategic move we got? Turns out it is. This thing has changed the standards. It has been internationally successful without meaning to be. It's aligned, people have used it in a variety of ways over the years to align curriculum, to, you know, so it's a pretty important document, but making improvements to it to make it even more valuable to meet the moment where we're in, I think is, and then other things like the toolbox come from that. This is the foundation of that. So I totally appreciate your point. The clean collection, this is not a trivial task for Gina and Katie to realize, and Anna. But if we change the climate literacy guides, all the tags in the clean collection change. Sorry, Gina.
There are 800 resources that affects, so
Right.
no small task.
No small task, right? So this is a non-trivial task that it has secondary and tertiary effects. It's important. And so some of those may totally, I mean, and Gina, I will protect you as much as I can, where we're adding concepts as opposed to scrambling everything and like the codes don't make any sense at all. And so you have to completely retag as opposed to, you know, maybe we have to add a couple tags. So we'll be as smart as we can, so we don't make legacy work blow up.
It feels much more like busy work, not busy work to me, when starting back where Jim was commenting on being relevant and having the right statements at the right time and setting a direction that is relevant as we've learned more. And in your own words, Frank, what I heard is we've been busy learning and we're prepared to use all that to help set a guide that leaves us the best place to help this army that's moving forward move forward best they can. And it is such a rapidly changing landscape, and so imperative we get it right that it's, in my opinion, worth the work. People do use this to guide all kinds of activities, and if it's not in the best shape it can be to move us forward using what we've learned, then in a way we're doing a disservice without updating.
Right. And I think politically we're in a moment where we could get that done inside the window where we have maximum control. Yeah. To do really bold, strong climate work. Remember, this was released in March of 2009, which was 2 months into the Obama administration's first term. And we would not have the language in there if we had not done it at exactly on that timing. So in some ways we're even late, but we're fine. We have the political window to do what we need to do right here. So I'm not trying to be political, but I'm just, you know what I mean. It's the reality.
Yeah, and some of us can say things in different ways, but I'm always looking to make sure not saying anything that makes people feel uncomfortable. But that is it. There, you know, in America, things shift and go back and forth and do things. And when the roller coaster is going down, that's the time to, yeah, whichever it's the roller coaster going up, whatever. But it's a kind of a roller coaster. And when there's movement, you got to move, you know, and you got to do things, because there's going to be times when the resistance to what science and people believe in and need and have, that's going to be harder to do stuff if we don't take advantage of now. We're going to be in really bad shape when stuff happens, you know, when stuff goes back the other way. But right now, I don't think there's a lot of headwind right now, you know, by comparison to other times.
Not even close.
Yeah.
The only headwind we have in our community is a lack of funding. The federal government did not fund climate change education, climate literacy, climate empowerment, whatever you want to call it, the way they did with last time this set up. They've done everything but that. And that's been a hardship on our community, that we should have had, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars going in to this space from the federal government, and didn't happen. That's on Congress. And they didn't do it. Historically, they did. They didn't this time. I don't understand what happened. They've had even opportunities to do it, and they've chosen not to, repeatedly. So, you know, this is still an opportunity for us to make what we do strategically important. And that's an opportunity we have inside this, because we're making these very high level people read this thing to make sure it's written in a way. This gets approved at the highest level of the government, by the way. Like right up there with national strategies, and, you know, really, really high level documents go through this process. So, you know, it's a strategic opportunity to get them to read this and go, oh, that's important too. Like, ah.
And does this tend to work in the discussions in the high level? Okay, I mean, you know, we're not coming in and saying, oh man, you really screwed up, you didn't do education. I mean, once you start criticizing some above, they're going to shut off to you. Great, you got these things passed. We've got all these things. Now, clearly, to really make it happen and do that, we're going to need more for education, right? How are we going to, you know, the old thing of how are we going to do this without more HVAC techs and electricians and things, the workforce development. Okay, we're set up to do that. Let's put the other leg on the stool, or whatever analogy it is. Let's complete that. So it's applauding, but we have to go further and fix the lacking. Is that sort of the way to have people feel comfortable?
So you're making a strategic point, Jim. One thing that happened since 2009 is the increased focus on career and technical and future workforce. That is probably not in this document adequately. And that is a very strong play. The 3 bills you refer to have tens of billions of dollars going into that direction.
Yeah.
So have they thought about the, you know, 3 years earlier to build the pipeline of people into all of that? Mm-hmm. No.
Right.
Because they missed that boat, but that doesn't mean we can't fix that kind of in midstream. We have 3 years, this fiscal year, the next one, and the next one after that, to get all of those things lined up in a way that actually gets those alignments right. You know we do not have enough electricians in this country, full stop. We don't know how many more we need, but same thing with HVAC technician, wind technician, any technician, because they required extra education and certification. We are, you know, that is missing in this document. So I'm just, you know, I'm glad this is recorded, because this is kind of an organic conversation, but some of those will have to come back into our process to get the maybe we've got too much on the biogeochemical cycles and not enough on workforce. You know, you can't have everything. So we'll figure it out. I'm talking a lot, and Patrick, I'll leave it at this point, and then I want to open the floor because this has been super helpful. I see green lights. Okay, so got it. Take a deep breath. NCA 5 is a great point, Patrick. NCA 5 will be released in the fall of 2023. So in the past, this was also timed with NCA 3. NCA 3 and climate literacy 2 happened together. So probably if we start now, we'd be releasing this over a year of time. God, the clock even started. Thank you, Wendy. Your face is very, very telling today.
That didn't take long, did it, Frank?
No, it didn't. Oh, crap. But releasing this at the time of NCA 5 in that same space makes a ton of sense. So it would be about this time next year when NCA 5 comes out and climate literacy 3 comes out. Crap. Yep, got it. You're super helpful, guys. Thank you.
And Frank goes off camera to wipe the tears away from the cheeks.
Well,
Tears of joy. It's good to have purpose.
There you go.
To blow my nose, and it always asks me when I do if I'm speaking and whether or not I'd like to turn the microphone back on.
Please stay muted, actually.
Yeah, I was
That's
very
the
much.
point.
It's Florida basically has 2 allergy seasons every year. We're hitting the second one.
Oh, no.
Do you have a mold season? Because, or is that just constant?
That's called post-hurricane.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's scary. Hey, so I have a question. I think I've brought up I know I've brought up the America Adapts podcast before, but they did 2 episodes with Dr. Jesse Keenan evaluated the various federal climate adaptation plans from all the different agencies. And one of the things that was really interesting in his observations was that there was no education. A lot of the federal plans did not have education in them. And you know, Frank, as a federal employee, is that someplace that we can be also seeing if we can insert and push and support those agencies so that they're actually prepared too? Because if the people that are supposed to be doing the stuff and supporting it don't have it internally, then they're not going to be able to do it in the community. And I'll post the link to the 2 podcasts. They're just super interesting. And he actually read all of these federal agency documents and went over them. Some of them, I mean, really pretty thoroughly. And then even talks about, like, I can't remember which agency, like, he's like, wow, they really actually paid attention to graphics and aesthetics on this one. And, you know, this one, come on, guys, you need to do a better job and stuff. But it was very telling.
So Ginger, one thing to note is the executive order 14057, specifically in section 401, calls out engaging, educating, and training the federal workforce. And that's something that is chewing up my time, which makes this new climate literacy thing scary beyond that measure because of this other thing. That said, you made I think one of the ways you could take your point and strengthen it in the context of what we're already talking about is not just like what we are doing to understand science and make our facilities and our installations and our capabilities more resilient, but also to make our abilities when we engage beyond the agency into community more effective as it relates to climate. And that's a part of training that could be implied here, or it could be left off the table. So if that's kind of what you're getting at, I think that the federal enterprise has a massive footprint in communities across the country. Getting them to be better at that related to climate, I think is totally on par.
Well, I mean, we're seeing it ecology. If we don't have it internally, I don't see how we're going to do it in community. And
See, Patrick, do you have your hand raised?
Yeah, but it was taken, quick question I had for the group on another topic. So
Okay,
I don't want to
Okay.
interrupt where we're at here.
okay. What were you saying, Ginger?
Oh, just like my own agency, you know, we're supposed to do all this EJ stuff, and we don't have the internal capacity yet, and then we're supposed to do it in community, and like even just simple things like hiring bilingual people. Why isn't every single job announcement saying bilingual highly desired? It just seems like such a no-brainer, and I'm sure that the federal agencies have similar issues.
Thanks for bringing that up, Ginger. We only have 5 minutes, so let's move, Patrick, let's move on to your question too.
Cool. This obviously don't have time for discussion. Just a quick question for the group. If you are aware of these resources, Gina and I and a few others are gearing up to provide educational resource support for this UN Climate Human Rights Conference that's happening in December at CU in Boulder. And a couple of the things that I am interested in making sure we have support for are some type of online kind of youth engagement, action-oriented template where I could be running a panel with a group of high school students and say, okay, we're going to work through this together. Can you do this worksheet? And I know the Wild Center's got some stuff that's static for that, and I'm engaged Jen on that, but I'm wondering if there's something online, because I think that has a little more value for this context. The second thing I was curious about, another piece of the puzzle, is we're going to ask a group of educators to partner with us on designing activities based on conference panels using a simple template of like, here, we'd like you to consider a 30 to 60 minute activity or lesson. While you're in this panel, could you fill out this template to give yourself a head start to do that afterwards, and people can engage with the panel recording and your activity. And I just wondered, we can invent this stuff. It's pretty simple tools, but I wondered if folks had experience with things like that, or knew of things I should look at online before we dive into the creation process. I'd love to do so.
Patrick, my top recommendation is to reach out to like Jen and Reb from ACE and Climate Generation and Clio. Those are the top four, and just be collaborative in that, because what they are doing right now might not be exactly what you're looking for, but they'd be the closest to transform into what you're looking for of any of the groups that I know of out there on the landscape. There's others, but those would be the top four. Caroline, if you agree, I would think that would be, there's more, but I mean, if top four, make it easy.
I mean, if you put me in the list at the top, I'm always going to agree to this.
Yeah, we looked at the climate action planning worksheet that the Wild Center has this morning. I hadn't thought as much about the other groups having resources like that, but suggestion.
I'm thinking mostly networks of youth leaders that have been supported through leadership development, coaching, mentorship, all of that. So it's more the people and the programs that support them, as opposed to the resources they have per se. It's about relationships.
Yeah. Well, see, that's definitely an area that I feel like we're quite strong in here at Clio, is really building up capacity in youth leaders. Honestly, they continuously blow me away with what they put together. And I mean, I think, trying to remember which kids it was, but I mean, they met with Marco Rubio a couple weeks ago. I always just tell them, if they'd like to yell at some elected officials, then we can definitely make that happen for them. And that is in my experience, that has been very effective at recruiting, because there was nothing that I wanted more as a 16-year-old than to yell at the people who, you know, were not doing what they needed to be doing for our futures.
Good point. More sit-ins. It is 2:00 Eastern, so I want to be aware of everyone's time. Thank you all for joining today and for the great conversation as always. Appreciate it.
Thanks. I wanted to
Thank
let you
you.
guys know that I made a contact in the SL's
Oh, good.
event in Yakima, and I was just going through the slides, and
Oh,
because I
cool.
wasn't in any breakouts with her or anything, and so she's an hour away, and I'm going to go visit her students. So
Oh, nice.
cool. There's one
Love to hear that.
connection. I'll talk
Love
about
to hear
Hanford, not climate, but whatever. We can talk about climate too. All right. Have a great week, guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Appreciate it.